So,
breaking news! Melissa McBride, series regular in season 2 of Daryl Dixon. All right, give it up for Melissa McBride. Let's let her hear us from here. Greg, you've worked with Melissa since day one of The Walking Dead. What's it like to bring her over into this new story?
It's amazing. You know, Melissa and I met on The Mist, and that's why Frank Darabont cast her in the show. She had like a really small part and did such a great job that he brought her sort of out of, she was doing casting, wasn't even acting a lot, and brought her onto the show. So we're beyond excited.
It's amazing. I want to get to the other big thing at the end there, Norman. You know, about seeing Daryl at the end. What's going through his mind there? He's got the boat on one side, he's got Laurent on the other. It seems like, I mean, that's a hell of a choice to make, and it seems like the whole season has been leading up to that choice in terms of the whole sort of concept and definition of what is home. So what can you say about him as he's standing on that beach?
I think he's you know, home is where the heart is, and he's starting to open his heart up to these people a bit and starting to get to know them. It's very Walking Dead to like just get almost there, you know, and have it pulled away from you. I don't think he was expecting. I tried to do a little bit of a smile on my face as I sort of fought my way to the boat, and it's going to happen. And I didn't expect to hear his voice. But you know, there's something about that cast and those people and those characters where I'm kind of feeling like that myself in real life. But it, you know, it's he wants to get home to his people, and he's sort of finding a family there where he didn't expect it. You know?
And that's kind of what we talked about from the beginning as being sort of the central premise of the show, was what happens if in trying to get back home to the people that you love, you find yourself belonging also somewhere else. You find that you start to form another kind of home somewhere else, and what's that dilemma like? And that's where you are on the beach at the end. And Losan kind of says it in that scene into him. You know, that was always sort of the thing we talked about from the beginning as being the central emotional challenge. It's like, I just want to get home. I don't want to form connections. I don't want to belong here. I belong somewhere else. I got to get back there. And in the context of trying to do that, the character finds himself, you know, almost against his own will, forming bonds, forming connections that make it tough.
It's funny because, you know, you have Daryl on one side, Laurent on the other side, and you two in the middle. Which was the perfect segue.
That's like such a dad joke.
Well, very much one.
Well, it's funny you brought up the music, because like I was really drawn to the music, the orchestral kind of score before the other music, and it sort of gets to something that really intrigued me. I don't know about you all, but really intrigued me the most about season 1, and something I really want to get into. And David and Scott, I'll let you guys sort of lead this off here. Is just that the show is so different from the original series, and like not just in terms of the location of France, but like just in terms of the look of it, the music that's used, the scoring. Even Daryl, who I'd say shows sort of like an emotional range, maybe in some shades we haven't seen before. So, what were the discussions like as you guys were putting the show together, all of you, in terms of like how do we make this show feel different while also keeping the original DNA of The Walking Dead?
Right, but that was exactly the mission. The mission was clear. It was simple, but not easy, and it was to uphold and maintain the standards of The Walking Dead and the universe that has been created to such a high level of excellence for many years, and yet to sort of broaden the aperture and widen the scope. And those were the conversations all of us had there. And so in my head, it was always the same but different, old and new at the same time.
I mean, one of the very, very early things was France, and that seemed to be like a blunt instrument in sort of shaking things up. And I remember talking to Norman about it, and I didn't know how it would land. And I don't know if you cheered or you just, I mean,
I was excited. Melissa was excited. We were all excited. You know, you're gonna drop this redneck in Paris. Like, how am I gonna figure that out? I was so different. Yeah, and you can see from the wardrobe and just the cinematography, like everything's so different on the show. I wanted to do something fresh. And Melissa wanted to do something fresh. You know, it was like day one, I'm like, how am I going to play Daryl with a scarf on? And how am I going to figure that out?
Suspenders. What are they? Suspenders.
Yeah, and suspenders.
Who's on a scarf?
And we made it,
Remember talking about that because he ends up at the Abbey in episode 1, and he's got to change clothes because he's been in the ocean for a few days.
Yeah.
And he said, "What are we going to wear?" And I said, "You're going to wear the priest's old clothes,
Yeah.
whatever clothes the priest has around, because that's the only man's clothing that's there."
And I wanted them to be like as old man as possible, and I just wanted to try different stuff. Like everything's so different. The cast are so good, and our crew is so good. It's wild to work in France because, like in America, like in Georgia, we were like bang, 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 bang. Like we had like 3 cameras and 4 cameras going at the same time. It was like insane. But in France, like you'll do 1 take, and then they'll stop and roll a cigarette and talk about it. And I'm like, what are we waiting on? And then I found out, I think through David, I think through you, what they were saying, and they were saying, well, what story are we telling with this camera move? And I was like, what? Just keep talking. Take your time. and you can see the shots are so beautiful, and the crew are so excited to be working on the show. It's really refreshing. It's great.
And they were huge fans of the show too. The show has a big following, obviously here, but overseas, the fans don't have the access to The Walking Dead that you guys do in terms of the panels and things. So when we went over there, people were so excited to be on set. The first time we brought zombies on set, everybody stopped what they were doing and applauded. And they were like touching the zombies like, is that real? How do you do that? And it was really nice because in Georgia, after 12 years, we're like, all right, bring in the zombies. Yeah, whatever, great, okay, sure. It was really nice to have
They're eating Cheetos or
yeah,
whatever.
it was really nice to have everybody just enthusiastic, from the production designer and the DP and everyone. They were so delighted to be a part of the show that it shows. Every ounce of enthusiasm shows on the screen.
They were so obsessed with zombies at times and they were great. Obviously, what Greg did on this show is amazing. It's another step beyond all the stuff he's done before. But there were times where I would say, especially to effects guys and some of the crew, I'm like, that's great. I know you're into the zombies, but we're shooting an intimate scene over here, so we still need to keep the cameras going and let's film over here. Don't get too distracted by the zombies.
What's funny is to watch the neighborhood sort of come out of their apartments, and we've completely just fucking destroyed this block, and they're like, what the hell is going on here? That's fun.
But there was a lady who came out of her apartment in Paris and came down, and there were about 10 zombie walker extras standing there smoking cigarettes, and they sort of parted for her. And she went online and said, the zombies are very polite. They're very polite.
Well, I remember, Norman, you told me something a while back where you said, well, it's kind of cool. There's this parallel going on because Daryl doesn't know what's going on when he gets over there. And you're like, I kind of don't know what's going on either. I don't know what they're saying in French and this and that. So what was it like, just the language barrier in terms of filming over there?
I mean, it's part of the story. It's, Daryl's trying to figure out, is this going to be a fight? Is this going to be cool? Trying to figure out body language. I found myself doing that as well. But, there's certain things you can say without language, and there's certain, you can tell that this lady cares for this kid. You can tell the kid is sincere. The language barrier, it doesn't really stop us in any way, but there's an eloquence to the French language in an apocalyptic scene, which is sometimes hysterical and sometimes super sad. So, I don't know, it's been great. I have no complaints.
That was part of what was cool, too, about doing it in France, was you're able to juxtapose a certain kind of culture, a certain kind of history, including the language, against the apocalypse in a way that you can't do in the back roads of Georgia and most of the places that we've seen the show. Anywhere in the United States, you can't really do some of the things that we're doing on this show. And that juxtaposition is kind of powerful. It can be funny at times, but it can also be super moving. There's no other show where you could have a moat filled with zombies. Well, unless you did it in Scotland or something. There are certain things about France that were just specific that made a juxtaposition of that world with the Walking Dead universe and the rules of that really evocative and new.
Yeah, and we took big swings. I mean, we really, the fact that we shot in Normandy Beach and we shot at Mont Saint Michel and we shot in the catacombs and all over Paris. Like, I don't think there was one element that we didn't pay tribute to or honor. And it really was, for me, and Norman and I have been talking about the show for 8 years, and it was always, the idea of him sort of going out and having that vibe where he comes into contact with people and his life has changed and their lives are changed. So we didn't want to do more of the same. We didn't want to set up the same zombie attack sequences and the same beats. We really wanted the show to feel fresh and original, and we're grateful to every single person that's really noticed what we did, because I got stopped by a lot of people. Oh, those guys right there. Hi, guys. And everybody wanted to just say how grateful they were and how fresh and original they thought that the show was. So thank you guys for recognizing that, because we worked really hard.
Thank you for watching. Yeah.
So Scott, you said something interesting. You said at one point you're like, and it's understandable because this show's a big swing. So you said, I wasn't sure if it would land. Like, talk about your concerns and how you got over those concerns or to where it did.
Yeah, it was the kernel idea of all this, and David took the ball and ran with it and evolved this into this amazing story with this amazing characters that honor, the story values of The Walking Dead. But France was just the first core idea, and it's, we had this machine in Georgia that we knew exactly how to make the show. We did it in a very specific way, and we developed these people over 12 years, this incredible crew that became like family. And so, first telling AMC, that was a nerve-wracking thing, because it's completely out of their comfort zone, it's completely out of their country. But, okay, they're on board. But then, Norman and Melissa, telling them, like, it's all up to them at that point. If they don't want to do it, we're not going to do it. And Norman cheered on the other side of that Zoom, and Melissa giggled. And so, okay, now then it was getting real. And I'll just say, when you make TV and you see a show in New York, sometimes it's in Toronto, or sometimes it's in Atlanta with a big LED screen. And some people are getting nervous about France at this time. They don't know about making shows in France. And, things are being bandied about. And that's when Norman came into play. And as things drifted away from Paris, like Ireland for Paris, or Georgia for Paris, Norman was not having that. And I will say, producerily, straight as a producer, Norman just kept us focused on shooting in France. And if there's one person, in that early time, not switching away from shooting there, Norman was most responsible, because people were afraid, and it turned out to be this huge step forward for the universe, seeing it in a whole new light, and I really give Norman props for that.
I forgot to think right there in the end. That's the dude.
Yeah, it was also Melissa. We just wanted to do something completely out of our comfort zone and completely different. And so we're Costa Rica next, maybe.
Well, David, you can shoot in Paris and in France, but that could mean anything. You could just be in a studio in there. I mean, I don't know, you guys saw The Nest, Mont Saint Michel. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, the catacombs, I can't believe you guys were shooting the catacombs.
I would say I had Mont Saint Michel on my desktop